For so many people, your primary residence is the heart of your home. There's so much emotion attached to it, and likely it's also your biggest investment. If you're thinking about a divorce, you may be wondering what's going to happen with your home. And my guest here today is Hunter Dehn. He is the owner of Hunter Dehn Realty, and he leads a team of dedicated professionals who help people all the time make decisions about their home in the DFW market. Hunter, I want to thank you so much for taking time to be here with me today.
Jennifer, excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I am looking forward to discussing real estate and how it pertains with your emotional and fun situations.
That's right. Well, I always think that the interesting thing about real estate is it's always changing and it's always evolving. And so I've been doing divorce work now for over 20 years, and we've seen, the market explode. We've seen the market bottom out. And it is one of those areas where, we don't have a crystal ball to
That's
predict
for
the
sure.
future.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think it's always good to sit down with a professional because there are things that you can help explain to us that are happening in the market and help our clients make better choices when it comes to real estate and divorce.
Yes, we can try and help our clients make the best choices possible. Yeah, hopefully they listen to us most of the time. Yeah, so I've been doing real estate for over 20 years, like you, just in the Dallas Fort Worth area. I got started on the home building side, and then after 2008, went on the brokerage side. So it's been, yeah, we've definitely seen all of the markets and all the different things here in Dallas. It's been really exciting. The great thing is the last 5 years have been, ever since COVID, we've had some of the most exciting real estate markets I've ever seen in all this. And so, yeah, I'm happy to talk about all things real estate and what's going on today versus a few years ago. And then what people really ought to consider when they're going through what you deal with, when they're going through divorce, how to, you know, make smart, rational financial decisions, rather than just letting their emotions take over and let their emotions kind of drive the boat.
Yeah, 110%. That's why it's so great to be working with a professional because when you're in the seat, it can feel so emotional. And I know it was just a couple years ago that I helped my father sell my parents' home. And I know, like, I was surprised myself at how emotional it felt, and you really can't make those clear decisions when you're kind of in the heat of the moment. So having a professional by your side certainly brings value to that scenario.
It's so true. Residential real estate, under the best scenario, is always an emotionally driven decision. I mean, there's a reason why people don't buy homes off of spreadsheets on the internet, right? Like people, people want to walk through them. They want to smell them. They want to hear the sounds, all these sort of things, all these seemingly intangible things make a huge difference in the kind of emotional experience. So even when it's the best emotional circumstances, it's still an emotional transaction. Now, you throw a wrench into that, like death or divorce or anything like that, and it just exemplifies those emotions. So, luckily we're here having like when I sold my own personal house, I had somebody else, my business partner, I had her list my house and handle the transaction for me because I know, like, I get excited and emotional and worked up, and I need somebody else to like stand between me and my emotions.
That's right. Let's talk about it. For most people who are facing divorce, the first question has to do more with the selling the house.
Yes.
Are we going to sell the house? If we are we going to buy it out from one another? And that brings up questions of price in the market. So let's start and talk about for any seller, what do they need to be thinking about if you're getting ready to sell real estate? What do you need to be thinking about right now?
Yeah, so obviously timing is extremely important. Every market has different, like, so you live in the private school corridor, working with a professional that knows each specific market's individual timing and seasonality of it. In the private school corridor, most private schools send acceptance letters out in the beginning of March, right? So the private school corridor, you get all this anticipation leading up to the first week of March. Sometimes people go out and look at stuff, but a lot of people that are coming in from out of state and hoping to get in the private school system, a lot of them will wait to make a final decision till they know what private school they're getting into. So, the seasonality of like the Preston Hollow market is different than say like a Frisco. A Frisco, a lot of the people in Frisco go to the public schools. They're great public schools. Well, that market gets fired up a little bit later. So timing's really important. Working with a local expert that knows the seasonality and timing, then, you know, understanding what is selling quickly and for the most money in that time. I'll never forget working for Builder back in 2008 and going and seeing these homes with all these turrets and all like the more intense the moldings and turrets and spirals and all this sort of stuff. And you couldn't tea stain and glaze and faux finish enough walls. And I was like, man, this is amazing. Someday I can't wait to have a house where everything looks stained and castle-like. Well, today that's not so much the case. Everybody's going clean. So knowing how to properly value the finishes and upgrades that you have based on the current market and how that is going to differ your value up or down from the comps and the neighbors that you might see. At Zillow and some of these online deals, they use an algorithm mostly based off of square footage and characteristics like bedroom, bath count, stuff like that compared to others in your either zip code or area or whatever. And that can help to some degree, but every house is so different that, that can be the value you see on Zillow can be way far off. And I mean far.
The other thing when we talk about value, like how much is my house worth? Because that's the question that people often want to know. Like what am I going to get for it? Or what am I going to have to pay my soon to be ex-spouse to get for it?
Yes.
So of course, yes, those online markets, people come in with those values. They also come in sometimes with the appraisal district value, especially if you're the one wanting to keep the house.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about why the appraisal district is not necessarily the value of the house either.
Yeah, so Zillow and the appraisal district are generally not walking through your house. They don't know how your house smells. They don't know what color your bathroom tile is. They're making assumptions. The appraisal district makes assumptions based off of an appraiser driving by once every few years. And they give your house a grading, like you in school, A, B, C, all that sort of stuff. And then they just kind of make general assumptions after that. What's great about that is it makes it easy to fight and keep like I fight my property taxes every year. I don't like paying taxes. I want the appraisal district to think my house is terrible,
And so the pictures you're taking to the appraisal district are not the pictures you're sharing with your friends, right, on Instagram.
I share pictures of my house or parts of it, yes, that I want them to see. It may be a little bit different than the experience. But talking with an agent that knows what's going on is always going to be the more seasoned an agent that has more transactional experience, especially in your area, the better information you're going to get. Appraisers are going to do a good job, but sometimes appraisers are more off from an agent's valuation because an agent is looking at it from the perspective of, hey, I work with a ton of buyers. I'm walking through the neighbors' houses with buyers looking to actually buy them. And I'm hearing the feedback that those buyers are saying. They're going, oh man, how much is it going to cost me to tear out all this travertine tile, and replace it with, the latest, white oak floors or whatever it is, and they're taking that into the value. The buyers are taking that into valuation. Whereas the appraiser district might say, hey, look, that travertine's high quality material. It's not cracked. It's not broken. It's worth the same as brand new hardwood floors. Right. But that's not the same with buyers.
And the other thing that I've discovered that I've learned is really interesting is that when we're talking appraisals with these values, really it's an educated guess, right? Because anything short of actually selling the house to a willing buyer is, it is an educated guess. So you can hire an appraiser to come in and do the appraisal, but tell us what you're seeing these days with appraisals.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. A house is worth whatever a buyer's willing to pay for it and whatever seller's willing to sell it for. And even I do over 100 transactions a year in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right? But even still, I walk into these houses and I compare them to the other homes that have sold in the area, but I still don't know what person's walking through that door, the first week or week 10 on the market and what they're going to be willing to pay. But we use statistical analysis. So as agents, we use the same statistical analysis that appraisers use. We look at the comps, we look at price per square foot, we look at how many square feet is in the lot size, we look at the quality of construction of materials, but then we also are using our knowledge of working with buyers in the area that's most current and what's going on in the current interest rate environment. Because as wild as the news cycle and interest rates and everything have been, sometimes the market today is much different than 6 months ago. An appraiser may go back a year. Well, the market a year ago is not the same today. So if I use a comp from a year ago, it may be way lower or way higher than today. So talking with a real estate agent that is working daily in the market is going to give you the most real-time data.
And let's talk a little bit about the difference between, you were talking about a broker's opinion of value versus like a comparative market analysis. So what's sort of the difference between those two?
Yeah, so every realtor has to have a salesperson, real estate salesperson, which most people think of as a realtor, has to have a sponsoring broker, right? And it just means to be a broker, you have to have more experience, more years of holding a license, more transactional experience. So a broker's price opinion is something where a broker is going in and doing kind of the work of an appraiser without having an appraiser's license, but putting the broker's basically stamp of approval on the valuation. And so some banks will allow a broker's price opinion to carry for like refinances and stuff like that. Sometimes they won't require a full appraisal. Sometimes what we call a BPO, a broker's price opinion. It's very similar to comparative market analysis, but it's a little bit more in depth, and it is performed by a broker and has to be signed off by a broker, which generally we have a lot more classroom hours of education and years of real estate experience to get that license.
So of course, for a real estate appraiser, you have to pay for the appraisal. Are you paying for a broker's price?
So for most clients, like I do broker price opinions for free. It's part of us. I like to serve. I believe in, if I help enough, kind of the old Zig Ziglar motto, if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want in return. And so we don't charge for broker price opinions. We could, and some brokers do, but a lot of them will do it as a service for their clients or potential clients in order to gain goodwill, trust, and eventually hopefully earn some business out of it.
So it sounds like a good starting place if you're curious about what the value is going to be for your real estate is to get that broker price opinion.
Absolutely. Call a good agent, call a good broker, get it, at minimum, get the market analysis. I would talk to a couple agents possibly. If you know an agent that you already trust, go with them. The key is to have trust, and if you feel that an agent's competent or the broker is competent and trustworthy and has, knowledge of the market, then they should shoot you straight. There's a lot of great real estate agents out there. I know people like to laugh and make fun of, realtors, but there's some really bad ones out there, but there's also a lot of really good ones.
People also like to laugh, make fun of lawyers. Hey.
No wonder we get along so well, right?
Right. I was just thinking if you're, thinking about getting a divorce and you're in a place where you and your spouse are talking about a divorce, it's really great if you can agree at the outset and find somebody that you both trust.
For sure. Starting off, like when we're meeting a lot of times we meet with people early on in this process as they're figuring out values of their assets. And we kind of talk them through and set expectations of like, hey, here's how this might look if you do this before the divorce is finalized. Here's how it might look after. And, if you guys are in a good place where you're communicating and you've got kind of the same goal of like, hey, this is not what we set out to do. Nobody sets out hoping to get divorced, right?
100%.
But if you guys are, say, okay, this didn't work out like we wanted, but we both benefit from getting the most money out of the house. We both benefit from getting through this with as few wounds as possible. it can go well. Our team, usually when we're working with in a divorce scenario, my business partner, who's a woman, we'll sit down, usually individually, but sometimes together, and we'll say, look, we're here, we are going to be a trusted neutral party. We're going to have one person assigned to the one spouse and one person assigned to the other spouse, but we're going to treat everybody fairly, and everybody's going to have an advocate in the deal watching out for them so they can hear them without feeling like, hey, I think this person likes my spouse better than me or whatever. And we're able to, sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's messy. And a lot of times, we have to hear some venting, and we're okay with that. But, we stay dedicated to, we tell them like, hey, look, we're dedicated to getting the most money for this property. And so we're gonna be that, we're going to manage the emotions and try and be that stability through this process, at least as it comes to the real estate.
And I really want to just speak to the fact that having somebody who has that EQ, that kind of emotional intelligence when you're in this situation, it can be so helpful because, if you're in an emotional state, it's helpful to have somebody who can give a little space for that, right? Not let you stay stuck in that because that's not going to help anybody. But sometimes a little patience and grace and a little extra, explanations or whatever is needed.
100%. We understand that this is a really tough emotional time. It is okay to have emotions. It's okay to let those emotions out in a healthy way and have someone there that can listen to you and understand like this was not ideal. A lot of times when we're selling these homes, it's both parties don't necessarily want to sell them. They might know that they need to, but it's a grieving process, and they're grieving, and like we're there for people to go through this grieving process, and then we have to remind them like, hey, we know the end goal is this is what's probably best long term is to get this house sold for the most money possible. So let's help you get there, and my grandfather used to tell me, don't let your mad get between you and your money, and yes, it's okay to be mad, but let's not let mad and spite cheat you out of coming away from this in the best financial position possible.
And I'll just chime in these days, for a variety of reasons, people will choose not to sell the house. Yeah. But knowing and understanding the value of your house will really help inform that decision. Sure. And there are other options, and I'm sure you have good mortgage brokers too who can help look and see, can you assume the loan? What other options can we have? But for the person who has realized they need to sell the house, the next big hurdle to overcome is finding that next home, right?
Yes.
Relocating your family and getting set up for your next chapter. So kind of walk us through what does the buying process look like these days?
Yeah. The good news is right now, the buying process is the easiest it's been in 5 years, with the exception of interest rates, right? And so, right now there's more inventory than normal. So it's a healthy, it's a more balanced market. It's not a bad market for buyers or a bad market for sellers. For some sellers, it feels bad because you don't list it on a Friday and sort through 10 offers on Monday, right? It actually takes, we actually have to make some effort. We actually have to do our best to make the house look as beautiful as possible. We also have to price it as competitive as possible, but things do sell. For buyers, they have the ability to go out, and there's a lot more houses on the market, so there's more to choose from to make sure that next, realtors aren't free. We're not cheap, just like attorneys aren't free, we all both have our value, but making a good decision to find the right place and being patient and going, okay, this is not just the property for next year, but maybe this is the property for the next 10 years. The longer that you can stay in a property, the more it can appreciate without having to eat those transaction costs. So now the one challenging thing, and I dealt with this with a client this morning, they are going through a divorce. Nothing has been finalized yet, and he's moving out, and he found a place that he wants to make an offer on. And I had to say, hey, I love you, buddy, but you need to have a conversation with your attorney before we make an offer. And I would love for you to explain a little, if you don't mind, how that works when someone's not divorced yet. They already know they're getting a divorce and they want to purchase something.
So generally speaking, during the marriage, when you acquire property, that property is community property. And in the state of Texas, there's no such thing as legal separation. So this happens a lot with couples who have
Which
been.
was, I'm embarrassed to say that was news to me that I found out earlier today. So thank you for teaching me. I didn't know.
Well, and it's interesting because so much of our the ideas that we have about divorce come out of Hollywood or California. I mean, out of California or New York, right? And so
Scary.
it's not Texas
Yes.
usually. That's divorces are making the headlines every once in a while. But
Excuse me.
the interesting thing is that, so when you have people who've been living apart, even if they've been living apart for years, they're still married
Yeah.
until they're divorced.
Right.
Now, when a divorce is pending, there are things that we can do. We can enter into agreements. We can agree to a partition of assets, which takes your community property and makes it separate property. And you can actually then go and acquire a house as your separate property, or you can at least have a binding agreement, maybe a mediated settlement agreement as to, if you go and buy property after that written agreement, then that will be your property. But it does create some kind of hairy situations that people find themselves in when they think, well, I'm just going to go buy this. I'm just going to put it in my name. So it's my house. And that is not what determines whether it's community property or not. Title, we don't look at title. We look at when was it acquired. If it was acquired during the marriage, then we're going to have a community property asset and debt that has to be dealt with in the divorce.
Absolutely. And this is why it is so important to even if, let me just tell you, and I have a friend that conversation with him and his soon to be ex are very amicable. And then he's like, oh, we're just gonna do it all ourselves. We're gonna figure out the separation. I was like, look, even I think that's great that you guys can work through this on your own. I still think y'all should have talk to a good attorney that maybe can help both of y'all through it in an amicable way, just so that you guys know legally how it should all happen.
I love that. And I am going to take a moment to kind of discuss that because we get a lot of people who call in and they are both in agreement that the divorce needs to happen. They have talked through the finances, they've talked through the kids, they know what they want it to be. And so they'll contact us asking if we can just do the deal for both of them.
Yeah.
And in Texas, do you know, it's really not ethical for one attorney to represent both parties.
I didn't know that.
So what we do is we explain to them, one of you is going to hire the attorney.
Yep.
And then we will work on your behalf. You'll be our client, but you're going to do most of the negotiations. And that is by far the best, most cost-effective, most efficient way to get a divorce if you really are in agreement, because we help navigate those things.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we were talking about this a little bit earlier too, right?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence is super fun. Everybody loves a good chat GPT little, conversation. But boy, is it wrought with misinformation.
No doubt.
And when you're putting your hands, your life, your future, your wealth, your real property, your home, those assets in the hands of a thing that has no accountability, it's so risky.
So risky. And I had this conversation. I'm like, expensive. I mean, mistakes are so expensive. Whether it's in real estate or legal. So I'm telling you, mistakes are expensive. And it's like having good representation, whether it's in real estate or legal representation, what you will spend on it will typically be saved tenfold. In mistakes, they will keep you from shooting yourself in the foot. It's like,
it's exactly true. It's so true with real estate.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a lawyer and I draft some real estate documents and, we help people with real estate issues, I would no sooner act as my own agent, because you don't know what the mind trap you're walking into, minefields,
right.
And so it really does help to have that trusted advisor.
For sure.
And I think these days with there's so much information which is available, and that's great. It's empowering, but the mistakes can be devastating.
Well, just because there's a lot of information doesn't mean it's all good information.
Exactly.
And that's the big problem, is sorting through. And now with there's 200 different websites that will tell you what your house is worth.
Right.
And they will all tell you a different number,
Right.
So we've got people more confused than ever because their head is spinning. It used to be, when I first got in the business, which ages me, before Zillow and the internet was there, but it wasn't worth a whole lot,
Still have a book, an
Yeah.
MLS book.
Yeah, but it's like, it used to be like, oh, Your friends and neighbors are all going to become real estate experts as soon as you say that you're going to buy or sell a house. And so we used to have to talk them through all that noise, as we call it.
Yeah.
Well, now not only do they have all their friends and relatives and expert neighbors, but now they have 200 websites and chat GBT and everything else. It's just got their head spinning in 10 different directions. It's like, hey, look, we're here to sort through the noise for you. All right. Look, this is what we do day in, day out. Just try to eliminate as much of that noise, and we'll work through all this. Here's where your values are going to be. It's going to be a narrowed range. We can't tell you exact to the dollar, but we can tell you within a range what to expect. And we should be able to hit that unless there's some major change that happens. Yeah. And that's what's great about good attorneys. In the times that I've had to use them, they're like, look, I can't guarantee exactly the outcome, but I can tell you, here's what to expect, and here's how the process is going to work. And as long as you don't do something stupid, here's what you can expect to happen, and it's usually been the case as long as I haven't shot myself in the foot. So,
It's true.
so far, so good.
That the actual intelligence, as I like to call it, and that experience that you bring as a professional is so important. Hunter, I've really enjoyed visiting with you.
I've had a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
This is a good conversation. And if you are looking at listing your home and want to know what it's worth and want to have a better idea of what your options are going to be, I would encourage you to contact Hunter and his team at Hunter Dehn Realty. And of course, we would love for you to subscribe and stay tuned for more shows as we discuss life and divorce and all the things. So thank you so much.
And I would suggest, if you are considering getting a divorce or starting the process, to call Jennifer, because she's the best. She's smart.
Thank you.